Hi, we're Quainting Curious Volumes. My name is James. So, I'm going to do a Friday Reads today, a little wrap up of what I've been reading lately, what I plan to read next week. If you haven't seen it, I completed Gabriel, the booktube challenge that no one wanted. I posted my review of Anne of Green Gables earlier in the week. I don't think I had very much interesting to say about it. But I did get to go on a little tangent about Evelyn Nesbit and Stanford White and Harry Thaw, which was fun. Um, and I got to wrap it up. I got to finish Gabriel at long last. I had some great comments on the Anne of Green Gables one. I have really good commenters, and often they'll have more interesting things to say about the books than I do. Especially thank you to Gloria, who had a lot to say about Anne and had a long experience with that book. Um, I had another great comment from Libro Paradiso, who's one of my regular commenters and has a really great channel of his own, where he talks about reading, about how he doesn't read things like Proust in the evening. He reads them in the morning. I wonder, do you read different kinds of books at different times of day? I tried it a bit. I tried separating my reading of Proust into the morning hours and then reading other things like a Huckleberry Finn in the evening. I don't know that it made that much difference, but I do sometimes have trouble staying awake to read in the evening, and but I find that sometimes I'll doze a bit. I'll sit down at like 8 o'clock, 8:30, open the book and just sort of doze off almost immediately, and then I'll wake up and be with my finger still on the page, and I'll be able to read for another hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, just uninterrupted, which is delightful. Uh, I'll say a little bit about a couple of podcasts that I listen to. Um, I used to listen to a lot more before I got into BookTube, and BookTube has kind of filled up the space that used to be occupied by podcasts. But one that I used to like a lot was called, it still is called, The Best Show, and it started as a call-in radio show from New Jersey. It's kind of a comedy thing. Well, I guess it is a comedy show with a lot of um, indie music. And They did an episode this week, which was a topic that I was thinking of making a video on, which was phrases that must die. And these are, of course, phrases that you've gotten really tired of hearing, little cliche things. Um, and I had begun writing up a list of my own before they did theirs. Theirs are not the same as mine, though there was one that is quite similar. Their number one pick was, I believe, um, "It is what it is," right? And it's fine. Uh, my number one pick for a phrase that I've had enough of, and you see it on social media posts primarily, is "If you know, you know." Why do you have to say that? Obviously, if I know, I know. It's a classic tautology. It's even less than a tautology because it's not saying the same thing two different ways. It's just saying, if this thing, this thing. Useless. Why you got to put that in there? Skip it, I say. Look, if you use this phrase, it's okay. I'm not mad at you, as they say. um, but let's not use it. I mean, okay, do what you want. I don't care. I just don't like it. If you know, you know. Also, people abbreviate it, and it looks like one of those weird things that it, white supremacists use to identify themselves to each other. I don't like it. Anyway, let's see. Um, then I listened to another one, which was Very Bad Wizards, which is a very good podcast done by a philosopher and a psychologist. and they're both academics. And despite that, it's not a dry, well, it's usually not a dry conversation that they have. They'll talk about maybe an academic paper, maybe some culture war kind of thing, but then they usually spend a good deal of time talking about a film or a book or a short story. And they've done a few Borges stories. And this past week, they did an episode on Death and the Compass, a Borges story. And I must have read this 30 years ago, remembered nothing of it. So I reread it before I listened to their episode. Their episode was very good. But what I realized was that, well, first, I remembered nothing of it. And I probably didn't get much out of it when I was younger because I hadn't read the Bible and I hadn't read any of the classic detective stories that he was doing a sort of pastiche of. If if you've read Holmes and you've read Poe's Dupin stories, you'll immediately recognize some of the tropes that he is working with and what he ultimately is doing. And I'm not going to say any more about it, but if you like those stories, those classic detective stories, and you want to read a good sort of takeoff on it, a pastiche that is like 10 pages long and extremely effective, check out Death in the Compass by Jorge Luis Borges. It's just one of these great gifts of rereading things. When I read this years ago, I was not up to the level that Borges probably assumed his readers would have been familiar with these things, with the Old Testament and a little bit about Kabbalah and certainly Holmes and Dupin. But having read those now, coming back to this again, the story is so much more. And even knowing the end, that gives you even more. I went and I read it a second time, and knowing the end, the rest of it is even it kind of explodes, with meaning, which is just great fun. So that was probably the highlight of my bookish week. I am, of course, continuing to read Within a Budding Grove by Marcel Proust. I'm about halfway through it. Marcel has met Bergot, one of the authors whom he idolizes. He's had the experience of a person he finds very impressive and sophisticated run down and just tear apart this author whom he loves, and also take apart one of the narrator's own pieces of work. It's pretty brutal. But then Marcel is at the point that I am. He's gone on vacation to a grand hotel in Normandy, northern France, where there are a number of fancy people. It seems like everyone is having the worst vacation in the world. They're all just obsessed with their own status and how much they despise everyone who's less than them or more than them or different than them. It does not sound like a relaxing vacation that I would want to go on. But of course, this is also this is also M, the narrator of In Search of Lost Time. So who knows? Maybe he'll have some revelation. 300 pages down the line. Probably so, if I know anything by this book. So that's what's going on with that. I'm still rereading Huckleberry Finn rather slowly. It's a quick read, but I'm just doing a chapter at a time here and there. I had a great time doing the chess tag. I'd been thinking I was maybe a little bit past doing tags, but I realized how much fun they are doing that chess tag. And it gave me a reason to go and, not do a deep dive, but briefly revisit some of the things I read, like Ovid and the story of Balaam and his ass in the Book of Numbers. And Hannah, in her recent video, had some great things to say about tags and how it's kind of a storytelling part of YouTube and a conversational part of YouTube where we exchange our own thoughts on these same little areas, and it gives you a reason to kind of cast your mind back through some of the things you've read and thought about and revisit them, reevaluate them for other people. So thanks, Hannah, for framing it that way. And thanks for whoever tagged me for the chess tag. Reading Ideas was who it was. Yeah. So anyway, that's what I've got going on this week. I'll talk to you later. Thanks. Bye.